Okay, so hello. In my previous Chevy Avalanche video, I did the front brakes, and in this video we're going to be doing the rear brakes. Although for the front brakes there I go again, the front brakes I replaced the rotors. The rear rotors I am not going to replace, but I would like to remove them, give them a good sanding for a fresh surface. This looks a little bit shiny. I'm not an expert at this, so I'm not sure if that's glazed or not. I know the brakes have overheated in the past because the front rotors were definitely a bit warped, getting vibration through the steering wheel when the brakes heated up. And I'm happy to report that since I replaced the front rotors and driven the car around a bit on the new front brakes, there has been no shimmy when the brakes heat up. Although I have been trying to be very careful not to do that on the new brakes to let them properly, quote, break in, unquote. So we'll see how far we get here, but I really would like to get those rotors off and sand both sides, and also properly prepare the caliper mounting bracket for the metal clips, similar to what I did for the front brakes, so that we try to keep the rust monster at bay as much as possible and not cause problems for us down the road. So the first order of business is to get the caliper and the bracket off. The caliper requires a 13 millimeter socket for the caliper, and back here for this bracket it is an 18 millimeter socket. So I don't think that, although this upper nut, I think I could probably get the impact wrench for that. I definitely can't get the impact wrench for the lower, so we're going to try this the old-fashioned way and get these bolts off with manpower and socket wrenches. So we'll see. Now I do know that the torque is different on the back than it is on the front. I believe it is less, so these shouldn't fight, especially the bracket. The caliper bracket, those were torqued down on the front to a pretty hefty degree. I don't remember the exact number. I think it was 178 foot-pounds or something in that neighborhood. But I believe it's less for the rear. And of course, when I'm ready to put this back together, I'll confirm what the torque settings are and set them appropriately. So let's get at it. Righty, lefty, righty, loosey, lefty, whatever. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Right? That's the way that it goes. Indeed, I would say that was in the category of not too tight. Hopefully you can see this. The nut is turning up here, so I'll need a wrench to stop that from happening. And the nut's turning down here as well. I don't know, if this is a 13, that's going to be a 17 or an 18 maybe. I have a limited supply of open-end wrenches, so we'll see. Nope. 17, unlikely, but nope. So that's too bad. Guess I'll have to get an adjustable wrench, which is not optimal, but it's all I've got. See if the smaller wrench opens wide enough. Oh, look at that, just barely. I don't want this to hit on anything important. Hopefully you guys can see this and are not just watching my back, but if you are just watching my back, then I'm sorry about that. Since I'm under here, I'm just double checking to make sure that the jack stands look good, and they do. I've also got a 3.25 ton jack under the differential as a safety precaution, because even though I'm not directly under the car, that certainly would not be a good thing. This big truck would have dropped on me, right? Alright, I need a screwdriver. I should have brought that over. Up, down, up, down. I'm getting too old for this. Let's get a beat up old screwdriver to pry this. Got some bungees standing by to suspend the brake caliper. Interesting that this caliper is tighter than the other one, the front I should say, but I think the reason for that may very well be that the back shoes are in much worse shape than the front. So that rest comfortably there without falling. It's not taking any chances. I don't want to bust a line, but if you can see that caliper from where you are, it's sticking way out, and that kind of leads me to another observation, or perhaps more appropriate to say suspicion, that when I took this car to the dealer last, I confess I got lazy and went to the dealer for a brake job. I think you don't need to. I suspect, I should say, that my friends at the dealer did not actually replace the rear shoes, even though they charged me for new shoes, and they just left them on because, and I'll get these off in just a second and show them to you close up. I just don't understand, and maybe some of you professionals out there or people who are just more experienced than me, of which I would assume that most of you are probably more experienced, that these shoes should not be in this kind of condition relative to the front, where I was looking at these and I just assumed at the time that the fronts were in the same condition, and they weren't. They were in much better shape by far. I don't think that they replaced these. I think that they just, oh well, they don't look so bad, so we'll just charge the customer for new shoes, but we won't actually put them on. He'll never know. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. So I got the rear shoes off. This is the back. This is the business end, as you can see from the sheen. And as you can also see, we're right at the ragged edge of the life of this brake pad. Now this is the back pad with the little squealer. Right, there's the little squealer on it that's supposed to start screaming, and you can even see that the material is almost completely gone here, and I was not really hearing any squealing, and just a little bit. I noticed about 2 weeks ago, and just before I went on a 600-mile trip, I was driving next to another car or truck or whatever on the highway, and I heard a bit of a scratch, not quite a squeak, but intermittent, and I wondered about that, and I think that was this pad warning that it was well past its prime. In fact, you've got metal wear here, and this is the top. Isn't that interesting? Now, we'll have to see what the back end of this rotor looks like when I get it off. That's a bit concerning. So that's the one. And then here's the outer shoe. And again, you can see that there is almost nothing left. And so, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever that the front brake pads, when I did the front brake job, that they were about half spent. They were nowhere near as worn as these, and I would have expected the exact opposite. I would expect the fronts to be more worn than the back, which leads me to conclude that it's likely that when I paid somebody to do a full brake job on this car, that they didn't bother to replace these pads. Of course, I could be wrong, because this is the very first brake job I've ever done on my Chevy Avalanche. I've had 2 brake jobs done since I purchased the car in 2013. The car's got, it actually doesn't have that much mileage on it. It's got 70,000 miles, which is pretty low, I think, for a 2013 Chevy Avalanche. And I paid somebody else to do both, and I just think that somebody cut corners on the last job. So let's see if we can't get this rotor off. Yeah, that doesn't feel good back there. We shall see though. Let me get a screwdriver, a pair of pliers. Oh, screwdriver. Pliers. Let's get a slightly bigger screwdriver in case we need it. Squeal on my drawer for my workbench is really annoying. Okay. Took my safety glasses off, let's put them back on and see what horrors we can reveal. Of course, I'm concerned about this because it's Saturday, and if I have to replace this rotor, I'm not sure if any of the local parts stores are going to have it in stock. The days where you could be almost certain that you could hop in the car and go to the local auto parts store and get the parts that you need are pretty much gone. I think that's partly a creature of the diversity and complexity of the cars we have today, and also because automotive stores are not what they used to be. There are very, very few, at least at my observation anyway, that there are very few mom and pop auto parts stores left, and they were replaced by the cookie cutter stores. And so they don't stock obscure parts, they only stock parts that move relatively quickly from an inventory perspective. And so if you need something a little bit off the beaten path, you're going to have to wait for the parts place to get to the warehouse, or you could order it, mail order yourself direct, which will work, but you're going to have to wait probably a minimum of 2 days. In my case, I'm fortunate in the sense that for rockauto.com, come on, get under there, they must have a warehouse somewhere nearby, because if I order from them, I usually get it on the second day, even though I don't order second day ground or what have you. I'm sure that there is better ways to get this damn thing off. The parking brake is not on. Let's see if we can give this thing a few love taps and get it to pop. Where's my ball peen hammer? I might have to encourage it. Let's get some more PV. Well, no, it should be okay. Try and work that stuff in a little bit. Let's see. I'm looking for, well, I'm going to stop the video here. I'm looking to see if I've got some bolts I can use in those two holes. It may take a while. I'll be back. I'm back once again, and I found a couple of bolts. I think those are 3/8 bolts, and and I'm going to use a socket to try and encourage this rotor to let go. Oh, there we go. It's a 3/8 inch. Make sure I'm still aligned here. You go like that. Let's see what we can do with this. There we go. Okay, so let's make note of that, because you may need to do the same thing. Have a couple of these bolts ready in case you need them. Otherwise, you might have to put this all back together and start over some other time. I'll try to confirm the size of these bolts by the end of the video. So anyway, so I'm certain that those bolts are larger than 5/16 because that was what I started with. I had a couple of 5/16 bolts and they were too small, so that's why I'm guessing that those holes are 3/8. Now let's see the great unveiling and see how bad is on the back end of this rotor. Well, what do you guys think? You see that? I don't know. I do not know. Can I take you guys along for this? Let's see if I can. So that's the naked brakes. As you can see, there's the emergency brake ring. No need to replace that since it's unlikely that it needs it. I don't think it does. Nope, I'll unplug this. Hopefully the battery on this video camera is not all that great. There's a pretty substantial lip here and here. Hang on a second. Let me get the brake shoes for the rear. Okay. Well, I must admit, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I might have to put the car back together. I do have a second car, which is that Jeep, but I haven't driven it in a while, and I didn't like the way the brakes were feeling, which of course is ironic. Could give it a spin around the neighborhood and see if it's okay. I replaced the front caliper on that, and I was suspicious that I may not have bled the front caliper properly. Now I could take a second crack at bleeding the front caliper, then going to the parts store and getting the rotors, if they have rotors in stock. But I don't know, seems complicated. I could also do an Uber, which wouldn't be shockingly expensive, but my gut is telling me that I need to replace these rotors. Damn, that really sucks. All right, well, let me do some more investigating in terms of what I can work out here, and you will rejoin me when I've sorted this out. See ya. Well, I'm back. And as you can see, we have a new addition to the equation here, and that is a new rear rotor. So yes, I must say, not only disappointed to find out that the rotor was shot, disappointed to find out that I probably was ripped off by a dealer, a Chevrolet dealer, who was the one who last worked on these brakes. But in order to go get this, I decided that the most conservative approach, and not get myself into further trouble, would be put the car back together, drive to Advanced Auto in this case, buy the new rotor, and then come back, jack the car up again, take the wheel off, take everything apart, and as you've seen, I have done all that. And now what we need to do is clean the goo off of the new rotor, and there's nothing preventing us from putting that on. I'll clean off the parking brake mechanism with some brake clean to get that out of the way. But so we're back in business, folks. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this brake job in one day. So let's get at it, right? Where did the brake thing go? Like the Eric Go thing. Without the sound effect. Because I don't know how to do sound effects on YouTube. If you haven't noticed, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll see that my editing is very, very minimal. Because I don't have the time to invest to learn how to use all the neat bells and whistles and tricks and whatnot. I'd love to learn, but I just have too many priorities, and I'm not in it for the money here. This is not a monetized channel. I don't know what those rules are and so forth and so on, but when I'm doing something that I think might be useful to somebody else, I will record it. And that's what we're doing here today. Sharing my experiences, good and bad, replacing the rear brakes on my Chevy Avalanche. My beloved Chevy Avalanche. I love this truck. It is the best car that I have ever owned, and it's versatile, Of course, it doesn't get great gas mileage, but as long as I can afford the V8, then that's fine. I average around 14.5 miles to the gallon mixed. And in this particular area where I live, it's a little bit, it's not rural, but it's rural enough in the sense that from a commercial perspective of going out and buying things, it's a minimum of a 5-mile drive in any direction, even to get gas. And so I'm putting on more miles on this truck than I did in its previous, I guess, 4 years of life. And that has actually increased the average mileage, because it used to be less than that. Because where I lived before, while it was suburban, it was in classic New Jersey stand suburbia, where you've got to, everything is so built up and close in that it's sometimes only a couple hundred yards in terms of getting to commercial enterprises and whatnot. For instance, the supermarket where I used to live was a quarter mile away from my house. A couple streets, two right turns, and I was there. Here, I've got to drive 5.5 miles to get to the supermarket. So, anyway. But this is a fantastic truck, in my opinion. And this is my second Avalanche. I owned a 210 Avalanche LS. When I heard that they were discontinuing the Avalanche line, I ran out 2013 and I bought an, I had a 210 LT. And I went out and bought 2013 Black Diamond label, LT, before the Chevy Avalanche was no more, which I still am of the opinion was a huge mistake for GM. And from what I hear, they're bringing back a pseudo Avalanche perhaps next year as a addition version of the Sierra, which I'm not impressed with because it's not going to include the midgate, which I think is so is part of what makes this truck so versatile. You go from, in normal mode, a short bed pickup truck, you lower the midgate, and you've got a full bed pickup truck. Sure, you can't put topsoil in the full bed, but it'll take a sheet of 8x4 plywood or sheetrock with no problem. Ooh, that's going to have to wait until I clean off the emergency brake components, so let's do that first. My brake clean, and now back over here. Just bear with me here a sec. I want to get that plastic back. Well, actually, we can do something else. Just for the sake of time, in terms of setting up and whatnot, we'll just use that bin. And just adjusting the camera height to make it a little bit better. We'll zoom in here. I'm not going to go hog wild. How's that? All right, good enough. Okay. Alright. And we'll let that drip dry for a minute before we put the new rotor back on. I'm not going to reuse those clips. Those clips are just used during the manufacturing process, as I understand it, to keep the rear rotors from falling off while the thing goes down the assembly line. So there's no need to reuse them, and so we won't. And let's put the new rotor on the car. After all that careful cleaning, I got some. Okay, so new rotor. Now we're going to work on getting the pad situated, and for that we're going to retire to the workbench. So give me a minute to set up the workbench and I'll move the camera over. Back once again. Clean this thing off, get it ready for install, and look at that. Isn't that nice? You're seeing that, right? The backing came off when I removed this pad for the second time. But at least the brakes didn't fail while I was driving to advanced auto. And so I'd say that is a good thing. And the brakes came off, the pads at least came off a little bit easier that time around. Take our stainless steel hardware off. We have replacement hardware that came with the brake pads that we will install as soon as we have them properly prepared. Now, for those of you who have not seen my front brake repair video, what I'm about to do here is clean off as much as possible the machine surfaces here. And I'm doing this based on Eric O, South Main Auto's recommendation. And what he says, and it makes a lot of sense to me, is that you want to clean these surfaces off so that the new hardware does not get messed up. Wow, those glasses are filthy. So what we're trying to do is we're going to clean these surfaces up, try and get as all or as much as we can the rust off, so that as the rust builds up, it does not push out against this hardware, and as it pushes out, it then serves to bind our brakes. So to the extent that we can either slow that down or stop it, we will. And we did this on the front brakes, where I took this file and I took that file to these surfaces. hey? Yep. They're lubed up just fine. All right, so we have a packet of goop. Warning, may cause eye irritation. We do have a packet of goop. And it's only one packet. Important warranty information, blah blah blah. Hope to do. Okay. Stay up. Nope, not. So I'm applying this silicone paste to these machining surfaces, or I should say machined surfaces, again to prevent or try to prevent rust from forming. There actually seems to be more of the silicone goo in this packet than there was in the last packet. Sorry if you're having any trouble hearing me. I have a tendency to I don't know, mutter to myself, for lack of a better way to describe it. Okay, I think we've got all our services accounted for here. Now we've got to install our wonderful new hardware. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's encouraging. That's what we need. And now we place bracket 1 there. And bracket 2 here. And what I'm going to do is put some more of that goo on. Where'd it go? Yeah, there's definitely more of that goop. I think we were shortchanged on the front brakes. Only one packet, but that packet just barely covered the one side, and it looks to me like we're going to have enough for both sides. But I'm not going to be conservative with the application of the glorious goop, because I want my brakes to work. and work well. Okay, set that aside. Just want to step back here and make sure I'm still in the shot. I think I am. And now we want to this is pull off this plastic before assembly. Okay. It already appears to be, oh, there's fine print on this box too, and it says, all items shown in red are lubrication points, lubricate, ACDelco silicone brake lube, and that's weird. It does show the back of this. All right. I want to save some of that stuff for the other side, so if I'm being too generous, sue me. So we'll put some of brake grease that I have on hand on the back of this caliper. Not gobbing it on. I also want to put a thin film on the ears. Too much. So this is nice and lubed. And so now we have our squealer, which didn't squeal so hot for my last set of brakes. Come back here. Oh, that's good. It can only go on one way. Oh, stop that. There we go. Stay. I guess Mr. Motorcycle's back across the street. Oh, that's got the tab on the back, so wrong pad. And again, just a light coating. This way we're covered. Kind of about that. So now our pad bracket is ready to go, but before we can put, well, I could put this on, but before I do that, I want to clean up the brake piston, and I want to push the brake piston back into its into the caliper because it's way extended. And I think I ought to check the brake reservoir to make sure that I'm not going to overflow it when I do that. So let's try this together. Hang on a second. I'm going to stop the video and move the camera around. Yeah, it's too dark in here. Pulling the hood latch so we can take a look at the brake reservoir. Well, it's not full, but it's not that far away from being full. And by the time I push this piston back in, it will probably be above the full line, and I'll have to draw some brake fluid out. Just in case you've forgotten. Look how far out that piston is, so there's a fair amount of fluid that has to be pushed back. Let me prepare the caliper and then we'll push that back in together. Let me reposition the camera. Okay. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm just gonna clean up this face surface with some Scotch-Brite. I think I'll give this thing a squirt of brake clean too. Stay. Good boy. Of course, I don't have any brake clean down here. So okay. Let's push that piston back in. In fact, while I'm up, let me get our brake pad assembly. Back that out a little bit. Maybe come down. Looks okay, doesn't it? Let me know if you can't see. Okay. Slow and steady will win this race. You see that? No need to be in a hurry here. Let's see, that's it, bottom. Stay. Okay. I want to clean these threads out. And perhaps controversially, I don't know, put some anti-seize on these, on the ends. It's obvious that the last time these were off, somebody put Loctite on them. I don't know if that's called for or not. Hang on, I'll be a few minutes. I'm going to clean up these bolts. Okay. Let's get this bracket on. Bolts feel good. There was no grittiness. Got them nice and cleaned. Okay, finger tight. Okay. These bolts also look like they've had Loctite on them. And I don't have a manual, so I don't know if Loctite is called for. You can always go back, and if I really have to, if I'm really concerned that that's a mistake and that I shouldn't use anti-seize, which is not a lubricant, it's just something that prevent these bolts literally from seizing. Okay, make sure that this is going on correctly. Well, somebody's happy daddy's home. Dog's barking and all. wrenches. And hopefully I'm not in the way of this and you guys can see what's going on. I'm in the process now of re-bolting this, the caliper. Okay, for now. As I've said before, I'm not sure what the torque spec is for these 4 bolts. And of course I will find out. All right. Okay, guys, so there you have it. That is a replaced rear brake on a 2013 Chevy Avalanche. Black diamond label, 5.3 liter V8. We discovered that the rotor was bad, had to be replaced. And that was a big problem because I had to put the car back together to go to the store to get the replacement rotors, and everything else has gone fairly well, I would say. And so the only thing left to do is put the tire on and start work on the other side. I'm not going to record the other side because it's the exact same thing for the driver's side as it is for this, the passenger side. So that will free me up to go a little bit faster. The one thing I do want to check, which you guys can come along for the ride, there may not be enough light. Want a flashlight lying around? We may need a flashlight. I do have a flashlight. Let's go back to the front of the car and check out the reservoir for the steering. Not the steering, the brakes. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that level, but it's right at max, which means when I do the driver's side, I run the risk of overflowing if I don't remove some of that coolant. So I will have to keep that in mind. But there you have it. One rear brake replaced. Car much safer to be driving than it was before. I hope that that you've gotten something out of this. I will tell you that and I think I started out the video this way. I'm a DIY guy. I'm not a professional mechanic. This is my first attempt at brakes on an Avalanche. I don't have a manual to go by. I just have you know, my common sense working on other car brakes and whatnot. I still do have to torque properly those bolts, but if you don't know how to torque bolts, then maybe you shouldn't even try to do a brake job. So you don't need to see me do that. So that's it for this exercise. And since I am a DIY guy, if you follow the steps that I've taken here, you do so at your own risk. It's possible that I've done something wrong here and I don't know it, and I'll find out the hard way when I wind up on somebody's rear end or wrapped around a telephone pole or God knows what. So very much, if you follow this, it's an at your own risk kind of a thing, but at least it was educational in terms of seeing some of the problems that I encountered, and my expectation that the rear rotor was good, and that turned out not to be the case, and that was obviously a fairly significant and very inconvenient issue to have to overcome. So, and that was $178, by the way, for two rear rotors. All right, guys. For those of you watching, thank you for watching, and let me know if you see that I've done anything drastically wrong. Feel free to comment. Just do it constructively. Thanks. Bye.